Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday the 10th of October 2024. Opening up to the future. World Bank forecasts 4.4% economic growth for Sri Lanka this year. Highlights the necessity to continue with policy reforms to protect hard-won gains. Lead of the hour. Amend the Consumer Affairs Authority Act for better service, says President's Counsel Sarath Vijayasinghe. Parliamentary poll. With less than 36 hours remaining until the deadline expires, mainstream political parties submit their nominations.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
වැඩිම මනාපෙන් ජනතා තේරීම මෙවරත්
සුදේශී ඔරිජිනල් කුහුඹම තමයි.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I'm Taridu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. And in your top story this evening, while highlighting that Sri Lanka's economy has stabilised, the World Bank forecasts a 4.4% economic growth for the island nation this year. In their report titled Sri Lanka Development Update Opening Up to the Future, the World Bank noted that the potential for successful diversification and expansion of exports in manufacturing, services and agriculture is high if structural reforms are implemented. Addressing a media briefing to release the World Bank's report on Sri Lanka, its country director for Sri Lanka, Jevok Sargisian, highlighted that Sri Lanka has an untouched export potential of $10 billion and added that in order to make it a reality, it is necessary to facilitate investments by removing red tape.
Releasing its report, Sri Lanka Development Update Opening Up to the Future, the World Bank noted that Sri Lanka's short-term growth outlook has improved. However, structural reform is essential to raising the medium to long-term growth potential. The global lender highlighted that faster than expected macroeconomic stabilization has improved the growth outlook to 4.4% year-on-year in 2024 as the economy continues to expand amid the rebound in industry and tourism, increased private credit and improved supply conditions. As per the report, fiscal consolidation is expected to continue, although the financing needs will remain high in the medium term. Further, the primary balance is projected to strengthen further to 1.6% to GDP in 2024 and move towards the IMF Extended Fund Facility target of 2.3% of GDP in 2025. In terms of post-restructuring, the World Bank noted that the debt is expected to decline to 106.2% of GDP in 2024, 102% by 2027 and gradually decline towards 95% in the outer years, in line with the target set by the IMF EFF program. According to the World Bank, the gross financing needs will remain high in the medium term, which is approximately 20.8% of GDP on average between 2024 and 2027, with reductions in the outer years, and are projected to stay below the IMF EFF target, which is an average of 13% of GDP in 2027 to 2032. However, this reduction in the gross financing needs hinges on the government's ability to replace maturing treasury bills, currently 13.2% of GDP, with longer treasury bonds, which is subject to absorptive capacity of the domestic market.
After very painful economic crisis, stabilization has happened at the pace faster than most experts expected. Not so good news is that the country is not yet out of the woods. The pain that is experienced by Sri Lankans is huge. Country is still having a poverty rate of about 25%. Basically, every fourth Sri Lankan is poor. There are millions of Sri Lankans who are a shock away from poverty as well. The other is human development, health, education, social protection. They all have got hit by the crisis. And this is the reality that we're facing. And there is relatively narrow pathway forward, and unfortunately there is no any magic, silver bullet out there. The good news is that the upside is big. Export is one of the biggest areas for Sri Lanka to grow. And sustainable growth is the biggest part of the solution. There are at least about $10 billion of untapped export potential in the country in several sectors. To untap this potential, several things need to happen. Investments are absolutely critical for untapping it. For investments, removing red tapes and making more level playing field for both domestic and foreign investments is critical. And then we come to sustaining reforms. And so I very much hope that the new leadership of the country and all stakeholders will really come together and will make sure that the policy momentum is maintained and the country finally starts moving in the direction it deserves to be, and we see rapid recovery.
The external sector, tourism has been regaining ground, and inflows from tourism and remittances have been strong. This has offset some of the trade deficit that's now coming in, with imports recovering faster than exports. Current account is expected to be in surplus already in the first half of the year, contributing to a balance of payments surplus and also foreign exchange liquidity. This means that the central bank has also been purchasing foreign exchange, which has contributed to an increase in the reserves and also to an appreciation of the rupee. The appreciation of the rupee and the improvement in supply conditions have led to a fall in inflation, although prices still remain high. But this month in September, we actually saw the first instance of deflation in a very long time, which will hopefully drive prices down. We've upgraded the Sri Lanka growth forecast now, so it's expected to be around 4.4% this year. Inflation and the external sector also have a positive outlook. However, there will be pressure on the external sector once debt repayments kick in again, and there's going to be pressure also on the current account once the vehicle import restrictions are lifted early next year. In addition to this, there will be scarring effects on the economy, and how fast these can be addressed will impact the medium term. After 2024, growth is still expected to start coming down, and for us to be able to address this requires tackling some of these causes which have the scarring effect, including lower investment in human capital, emigration of skilled labor, and also lower investment in physical capital from the government side.
So it's important that Sri Lanka maintains this policy consistency, particularly to protect these hard-won gains. And I'll firstly emphasize the monetary, financial and fiscal policies. There have been significant improvement in this consistency over the last couple of years. It's important that this is maintained. Sri Lanka also needs to scale up these structural reforms that have started to really set the country on a better path. So this would really help resolve some of these long-standing weaknesses, enhance competitiveness, and address the root causes of the crisis.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now. චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් වන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
කාගෙත් ප්‍රියතම මෙලිබන් බිස්කට් දැන් 30ක් සීනි අඩුවෙන්. රස දන්න කාටත්
හරිෂෝ.
President Anura Kumara Dissanayake convened a meeting with senior officials of the Inland Revenue and Customs departments. The President's office noted that discussions during the meeting held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday centered on strategies to enhance revenue generation and improve the operational efficiency of both departments. Officials from both departments had presented the challenges they face in managing revenue and tackling tax evasion, while emphasizing the importance of strengthening cooperation between the two departments to effectively combat the issues. It was highlighted that better collaboration would ensure more robust enforcement of tax laws and prevent tax leakage, further boosting the country's revenue collection. Supreme Court Justice Murdu Fernando took oath as the acting Chief Justice before President Anura Kumara Dissanayake earlier this morning. Murdu Fernando is the second woman to hold the position of Chief Justice in Sri Lanka's history after Shirani Bandaranayake in 2011. Fernando joined the Attorney General's Department as a State Counsel, where she served for over 30 years, having been promoted to Senior State Counsel, Deputy Solicitor General, Additional Solicitor General and Senior Additional Solicitor General. She was appointed a President's Counsel while serving as an Additional Solicitor General. She was later appointed as a Justice of the Supreme Court by then President Maithripala Sirisena in March 2018. Former chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority, President's Council Sarath Vijayasinghe believes that the Consumer Affairs Act must be completely amended to provide optimal service to consumers in light of changing trends. Joining our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivariya Muwatta, Vijayasinghe also proposed the appointment of an ombudsman for the Consumer Affairs Authority. This role would facilitate proper investigations into legal market activities and administration on governance issues. He emphasized that the government and the Consumer Affairs Authority should encourage consumer organizations to effectively link the four main market components from manufacturers to consumers.
The Consumer Act should be
I
modernized.
have few proposals. Of course, it has to be completely amended and changed to go to the current needs, point one. And then I think we must have a consumer ombudsman. Ombudsman will solve a lot of problems. Ombudsman is a person, impartial umpire, who can be given some tasks for him. For example, he can be a mediator. Now, if you make an inquiry, if you lodge a complaint at the Consumers Authority, it takes years and years, and they are not competent to do it. And they are, but there's an ombudsman of inquiring to it. He will give directions to the government and to everybody. It has an immense task to do it. It's a question of formulating it. And then other one is, as I mentioned earlier, mediate the consumer and the trade. And there has to be consumer courts. That when I was the chairman, I introduced that it didn't work. And then consumer education. The other one is consumer organization. Those are a few things that we have to do for the consumer. And then, of course, again, and the consumer must be educated through various sources and various methods.
You mentioned about consumer organizations as well.
Consumer organizations are so powerful worldwide. I think the state and of course through the CA must start creating new consumer organizations, and then they must be given facilities, and also they must be educated to educate others. So that will be a solution to educate the media and to have an interaction between the consumer, the regulator, the manufacturer and the trader.
Sri Lanka decides 2024.
With the deadline for submitting nominations for the general election set to expire tomorrow, political parties submitted nominations for their candidates in several districts. Meanwhile, the deadline for submitting postal voting applications for the election is expiring at midnight tonight. The Election Commission announced that postal voting for this year's general election will take place on the 30th of October and the 1st and 4th of November, with the 7th and 8th of November being allocated as additional dates.
Several major political parties contesting the November 14 parliamentary election submitted nominations for a number of electoral divisions. Accordingly, the National People's Power submitted nominations for several districts.
තිරයි ශක්තිමත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවක් පිහිටවන්න අපිට හැකියාව ලැබෙන බවට කිසිම සැකයක් නැහැ.
වෙන පක්ෂ CC කඩ වෙලා නාම යෝජනා ඉදිරිපත් කරගන්න බැරුව තනිව මනාප පොරේක දඟලන වෙලාවේ අපි පක්ෂයක් හැටියට එක කණ්ඩායමක් හැටියට එකට එකතු වෙලා මේ ජයග්‍රහණය ආරක්ෂා කරන්න මේ මැතිවරණයේදී ප්‍රතිඥා දීලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the nationalist candidates of the NPP signed their nomination papers at the JP headquarters this evening. Candidates contesting under the Samagi Jana Balawege led Samagi Jana Sandhane signed their nomination papers at the Alliance's office in Ward Place.
ජනතාව සූදානම් අපි බාර ගන්න. දූෂණ, ෆයිල්, කේස් ඒවා මොකවත් නැති දෑත පිරිසිදු මිනිස්සු.
The Samagi Jana Balawege meanwhile submitted nominations for the Colombo district. Party leader Sajith Premadasa also attended the occasion.
In this election, with the blessing of the people, we intend to bring about a new era for this country. We will not place that burden solely on the government. It is all of our responsibility. All 22 million people have to unite and initiate a program for the betterment of the country, and we are ready to lead that initiative.
Candidates contesting under the Sarvajana Bale signed their nomination papers at the Mabima Janata Party headquarters. Mabima Janata Party leader Dilip Jayavira signed his nomination paper to contest from the Gampaha district. MJP Vice Chairman Professor Channa Jayasumana and Gampaha district leader Milan Jayatilaka will join their party leader in contesting from the Gampaha district.
The National People's Power, whom we consider as our main opponents, published their list of candidates yesterday and the day before. It appears that their candidates lack maturity. They only have 20 prominent leaders in the entire country. The rest lack political experience, and we do not think it will be difficult for us to compete against them.
Sarvajana Balaya's Madhara district candidates led by former MP Veerasumana Veerasinghe also signed their nomination papers.
The leadership of Sarvajana Balaya has a duty to advocate for Veerasumana Veerasinghe. That is because the Madhara district is a decisive district for us. We are eagerly awaiting to dedicate ourselves to make our candidates in Madhara, led by Veerasumana Veerasinghe, victorious.
Sarvajana Balaya submitted nominations for a number of districts, including Colombo.
ආණ්ඩුව අධ්‍යක්ීම් නැති ආණ්ඩුවක් කියන එක ජනාධිපති ලේකම්වරයාගේ සිට කරපු පළවෙනි පත්වීම් තුනෙන්ම රට ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අධ්‍යක්ීම් බහුල රටට ආදරේ පිරිසක් මේ රටේ ප්‍රධාන විපක්ෂ වෙන්න ඕනි. පාර්ලිමේන්තු කාලේ නාස්ති කරන විපක්ෂයක් වෙනකොට නිර්මාණශීලීව ඡායා ඇමති මණ්ඩල හරහා පාර්ලිමේන්තු කමිටු හරහා විපක්ෂයේ සිට වැඩ කරන ආකාරය රටට නෙවෙයි ලෝකෙටම කියා දෙන්න සර්වජන බලයේ සූදානම්.
Candidates of the New Democratic Front signed their nomination papers at the Election Operations Office on Flower Road.
එයාට අපි කරන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ. ජනතාව දීපු පොරොන්දු ඉටු කරන්න එපා. ඒකට එහෙම නැතුනොත් ජනතාව ඒගොල්ලන්ව ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනකොට කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්න ඕනේ මේක අරගෙන යන්න. ඉතින් අපි හිතනවා තරුණ කණ්ඩායමකට මේක අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා.
පසුගිය ජනාධිපතිවරණ අපි දන්නවා අපි යම් පසුබෑමකට ලක් වුණා. නමුත් මහමැතිවරණය කියලා කියන්නේ ඊට වඩා වෙනස් මැතිවරණයක්. ඒ නිසා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ජනතාව මේ කණ්ඩායම වෙනුවෙන් අති බහුතරයක් ඡන්දය භාවිතා කරලා ඒ ජයග්‍රහණය වෙනුවෙන් කටයුතු කරයි කියලා.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna candidates signed their nomination papers at the party headquarters in Nelum Mavatha. In the meantime, the deadline for independent groups to place deposits to contest the election expired at 12 noon today. The deadline for acceptance of nominations will expire at 12 noon tomorrow. Meanwhile, the deadline for submitting postal voting applications for the general election is set to expire at midnight tonight. The Election Commission emphasized that all government employees except those who have been made exempt from election duties must apply for postal voting, adding that not submitting applications or applications being rejected is not cause for exemption from election duties. The Commission also announced that postal voting for the general election will take place on the 30th of October and the 1st and 4th of November, with the 7th and 8th of November being allocated as additional dates.
Employees of all district secretariats, police stations and election officers will be able to cast postal votes on the 30th of October and the 4th of November. Employees of other government offices can mark their postal ballots on the 1st and 4th of November. For postal voters who are unable to cast their votes on those days, the 7th and 8th of November have been allocated as additional dates.
As the deadline for submitting nominations draws near, several former parliamentarians officially announced their withdrawal from the upcoming general election. Former MPs Vimal Weerawansa and Patali Champika Ranawaka announced that their political parties, the National Freedom Front and the United Republic Front, will not contest the coming election.
Several former parliamentarians have officially announced that they will not be contesting the upcoming general election. Accordingly, former parliamentarian Vimal Weerawansa announced that his party, the National Freedom Front, will not contest in the upcoming general election either as an alliance or independently. The former MP further stated that there is no doubt that some opposition forces are attempting to serve an imperial agenda hostile to the country, and his party will not engage in those activities to push the country into a crisis. Meanwhile, former Minister of Mass Media, Transport and Highways Dr. Bandula Gunawardena and former Minister of Justice Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa announced that they will not contest the upcoming general election. Releasing a statement, former State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe also announced that he will not contest the upcoming general election. In the meantime, former Governor of the Sabaragamu province Navin Dissanayake also announced that he will not contest the parliamentary election. Former Chief Opposition Whip Lakshman Kiriyala has also decided not to contest the upcoming general election. However, his daughter Chamindrini Kiriyala will be contesting under the Samagi Janasandhanaya. Meanwhile, it was reported that former parliamentarian of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Gamini Lokugay will not be contesting the parliamentary election. It was also reported that the national organizer of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Namal Rajapaksa will be a nationalist candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. During a media briefing, former parliamentarian and leader of the United Republic Front Patali Champika Ranawaka announced that his party will withdraw from the upcoming general election and will not represent the Samagi Janasandhanaya.
අපි මේ එළඹෙන මහා මැතිවරණය සඳහා
In the upcoming general election, we expected to represent Samagijana Balawegaya in several districts. The process was based on an agreement between Samagijana Balawegaya and our party, the United Republic Front, which was inked on 14th of August. According to that agreement, we expected to present candidates for 11 districts. However, during the last few days, when we looked at the nomination process, we realized that there has been a critical violation of the agreement. Hence, we decided to withdraw from the upcoming general election.
ඒ නිසා අපි කල්පනා කරා මේ මැතිවරණ ව්‍යාපාරයෙන් අපි ඉවත් වෙන්න.
Sri Lanka decides 2024.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
කාගෙත් ප්‍රියතම මැලිබන් බිස්කට් දැන් 30ක් සීනි අඩුවෙන්. රස දන්න කාටත්
හරිෂෝ
දරුවන් ගැන ඒ තරම්ම හිතන නිසයි ලංකාවේ අම්මලා විශ්වාසයෙන් මැලිබන් කිරිම දෙන්නේ.
Welcome back. The Sri Lanka Army celebrated its 75th anniversary today. In commemoration of the 75th anniversary, 139 officers and 1,273 other ranks of the Army were promoted to their respective next ranks. The promotions were made by President Anura Kumar Dissanayake in his capacity as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces on the recommendation of the Ministry of Defence and Army Commander Lieutenant General Vikum Lienage. Accordingly, in the officers category, 131 lieutenants and quartermasters were promoted to the rank of captain, while 8 second lieutenants were promoted to the rank of lieutenant. In the other ranks category, a total of 99 warrant officers class 2, 185 staff sergeants, 380 sergeants, 346 corporals, 111 lance corporals and 152 privates were promoted to their respective next ranks in both the regular and volunteer forces. Sarath Ganegoda was appointed as the new chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines with effect from yesterday. Ganegoda currently serves as the Group Executive Director of Airlines PLC and Deputy Chairman of Alumex PLC. He is a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and a member of the Institute of Chartered Management Accountants of Australia. He also holds a Masters of Business Administration from the Postgraduate Institute of Management of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Meanwhile, a new board of directors was also appointed to the national carrier under the chairmanship of Sarath Ganegoda. Accordingly, Sri Lankan Airlines' new board of directors comprises Buddhika Hewawasam, Sugat Rajapaksa, Eranga Rohan Piris Gunatilaka, D. Arandara, Ananda Atukorala, Lakmal Ratnayaka and Niranjan Arul Pragasam. The Colombo bourse closed in a positive territory today as foreign interest in John Keel's holdings continued for a second consecutive day. The broader all-share index closed 0.10% higher at 12,164.29 points. The more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 index closed 0.20% higher at 3,600.88 points. Turnover fell to 1.5 billion rupees from 2.1 billion in the previous session. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover, followed by the banking sector. Crossings were recorded in John Keel's holdings and Airlines. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 337 million rupees. And with that, here's a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.